All right, so first question, can anybody recognize where that song was used about 10 or 15 years ago?
Yeah, it was like used for recruiting or something, wasn't it?
I think it was the Army National Guard's recruiting.
It was.
Yeah. So,
Kind of a dark video. It was kind of dark video, if I remember.
With some funny hats, I think back in the early days. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys joining us. Let's start the first question with, when we think about innovation, collaboration, partnerships, sort of where we're at today with domestic concerns from cyber and other critical infrastructure, as well as the shift to great power competition. We've heard a lot from the Secretary of Defense in the news about the warrior ethos, and certainly it means a lot. What does it mean to you? Rob, why don't we start with you and we'll work our way down.
Well, the warrior ethos really, to me, is just more of a mindset of mission and people. You got the job, you got the threat, and you have to win, and that takes a different mindset. It's not about any kind of personal accolades or any of those kind of things. It's team, and I think it's long overdue to bring back the ethos of, we are doing noble work to provide a defense for those that we care and love, and we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to be able to overcome those threats.
To me, it's to fight and win our nation's wars, and so that's why the Department of Defense exists, and I think that's what the Secretary of Defense is emphasizing. So everything we do is about war fighting, and so that means having the mindset that Rob talked about, but it's also being hard to kill, being resilient, being relentless, and being willing to serve your nation and being willing to do what is necessary to defend the nation.
Yeah, I think for civilians and for the public generally, it's about understanding contextually where we are in the world and what the threats look like. A lot of people who aren't in the military, who aren't in a civilian role in the DoD sort of national security industry, they don't understand day to day what's going on in terms of foreign threats and what we can do individually to strengthen the country. I think we have an obligation, office holders, leaders, generals certainly. I think we have an obligation to continue to raise awareness and educate. And what that means specifically is that it's a really dangerous world, and we need as many of our citizens maintaining the edge, being alert, having their senses about them, and knowing that this is not, you can't just drift through life if you want to be an asset to the country, because the threats are real, and they are not just army to army, peer to peer, as you mentioned, but they really do involve gray zone warfare. Gray zone warfare is what China's engaged in right now, that doesn't involve necessarily pulling a trigger, but it does involve damaging our social fabric and probing weaknesses. And a lot of that gray zone activity occurs outside the military world. And I'm thinking of three things in particular. Fentanyl. Most of the ingredients that go into illicit fentanyl that's on our streets are coming from China. If you think the Chinese government is helpless to stop that, you would be wrong. And they have reason to encourage it, to foment it, to let it flourish. They're killing hundreds of thousands of Americans every year. without pulling a trigger. We see the same sort of gray zone warfare in the cyber domain, where they're going to get away. There are lots of other bad actors too, but I'm just using China as an example. But they're going to get away with as much as they can. And we're seeing this in the human trafficking sphere. We have raided in this state alone, this is going on nationally, internationally actually, we have raided a number of illicit massage parlors here in the state. Every single one of them are Chinese. Chinese currency, Chinese wire transfers. Are they doing it for the money? I was meeting with some international folks on human trafficking. Money's certainly a part of it, but more importantly, they are destroying the social fabric in our communities while making money off of it. So understanding this environment, high threat environment, is really important, not just for folks in the military, but everyone. And not everybody's going to play the same role, but just being aware and knowing what's going on, and staying up with current events, and being responsible and contributing, that is so critically important because our adversaries are out to destroy that and lull us into complacency.
If you've been paying attention to the news the last couple of years, you've seen stories about Volt Typhoon and Salt Typhoon, which are Chinese Communist Party state-sponsored cyber actors in our critical infrastructure systems like the electric grid and the water systems, et cetera. They're there for multiple reasons, and they are well-financed, well-equipped, well-trained. Rob, I want to come to you next with a couple of questions. First, explain to us what Posse Comitatus is and why public-private partnerships to build defensive capabilities are critical, both from just a resiliency standpoint, but also leading into deterrence.
Well, you do have the Attorney General that could probably explain Posse Comitatus a little bit. But you know, suffice to say is I think, you know, in what I was talking about earlier, one of the things that is very unique about the world that we're living in now is that, again, it's not the folks in uniform that are going to be our first line of defense when the next attack happens. It's going to be asymmetric. It's going to be multi-domain, and we have to be prepared to be able to handle that. And so they're using the bad actors of the world, the Chinas of the world, they're using our freedom and our systems to be able to get at, you know, our weak side. So things like Posse Comitatus, you know, we're now having to combine what the Department of Defense and the military is doing, but we're also having to do that with the civilian sector. And so, you know, how do we communicate, share intelligence, and work together to provide a unified defense is hard. And so when it comes to things like Posse Comitatus and the other things, and just the laws that we have that split what can be done, you know, we're getting to new ground, and to be able to put an adequate defense together is going to require us to work together. And the key, and we've learned this through the Forge thing, is that building trust between the public and private sector is a hard one to overcome. It's been in place for so long, but realizing the nature of the threat is going to require us to be able to get after that middle ground.
It's interesting too, because looking across all the states, there are very, very few, like one or two, who have fully appreciated how they leverage the unique federal and state authorities given across Title 50, 32, 10, 5, 18, et cetera. It can be done, but we need to accelerate that pathway forward and really use all the tools in our tool belt. If China moves in the Indo-Pacific, cyber and domestic critical infrastructure attacks are likely to be very early in that campaign. So General Bridges, will go to you. What does that look like, and what is the Guard's role in that equation?
Open source. If there was a Indo-Pacific encounter or engagement, that China would, PRC would want to disrupt critical infrastructure in the United States for two reasons. Number one, to undermine political will to respond to any overseas event. So if your attention is at home, your attention is not overseas. And so there could be power outages. So think electricity, water. If you can't go to the grocery store and buy groceries, or go to the gas station to pump gas, and then all of the chaos that local officials and government officials would have to do to stabilize that. If that were insufficient, then they would be interested in disrupting U.S. force projection into the theater. And so that would mean rail infrastructure or electricity or ports or different things like that to frustrate, disrupt, or prevent U.S. forces going into the region. And so in terms of critical infrastructure, a lot of that, a high percentage of that, is not in the Department of Defense, is not in the Department of Defense control. And so the key word here is dependencies. And so the Department of Defense and the U.S. military is reliant on infrastructure that is on or outside of installations or along lines of communication that would be necessary to enable forward movement. And one more point, and I'll pause here. 100 minus 1 equals 0. That is a formula out of Chinese systems destruction warfare. And so they're not interested in destroying your whole military force. They're interested in finding the specific nodes that if those were taken down, it would cause everything to collapse. And so this system that we have has to be integrated. They're a key component of the 2022 National Defense Strategy was integrated deterrence. So it is critical that we better integrate public and private partnership to create a resilient homeland that deters China from conducting these attacks.
And just to piggyback real quick before we stray from this, is that so much of what we're discovering is that, foreign investment into the U.S. and CFIUS, and, with the work I've been doing on the F-35 out in Fort Smith, we have a lot of bad actors.
Did you get a little attention there, did you?
Well, yeah, I've spent some time talking to some different people. But a lot of it is for them to have a better understanding of what Chad is talking about, which is understanding where our weaknesses and gaps are so that they can exploit that. And so a lot of it is an intel build on their part to understand how best to disrupt what we're trying to get done and how we're going to project force.
Because of our strengths, we have to cooperate more, collaborate more, integrate more, because our strengths as a country also provide some vulnerabilities. And what I mean specifically is we're a free society. The founders were geniuses in that they understood, because of King George III and the threat that he posed to them, they understood that they did not need concentration of power. So they vertically put power at different levels: federal, state, city, county, local. Also they put it around different branches. So what you have is, in very few instances, almost never, are you in a situation where one person is all you need, where one agency is all you need. You almost always, because the way our power is spread around, you almost always need multiple players at different levels cooperating. And if you don't have that, that's where our silos that have hurt us over the years, including 9/11, that's where we get the silos. Posse Comitatus is a good example. Because we love freedom, we have restrictions on which part of the military can do what, when, under what circumstances. It's not like some countries where whatever the dictator says, that's what the military can do. We have a lot of rules which protect us, but at the same time, they make it a challenge. And so you have to always be engaged, and you have to understand the value of cooperation. So when I became AG, I found out that we were doing nothing on cyber. Nothing. Now, we were prosecuting internet crimes against children, child pornography, CSAM, but in terms of ransomware, attacks on infrastructure, just having conversations with CISA, for example, none of that was going on. And so I established a cyber crimes unit. We started reaching out, started working. Jen Easterly, who was the head of CISA, is an old college friend of mine, so I knew her, reached out to her. We started that partnership. But we also knew that within the state, private sector partners, we needed to be engaged. We needed to know what the Secretary of State's office was doing. We needed to all be cooperating, collaborating. And, eventually I joined the National Guard, and the general's my boss now. I was in the reserve 28 years, saw the light, wasn't on the road to Damascus, maybe on the road to Damascus, Arkansas, and I joined the Guard. So there's a lot of conversations going on. And our system is built to where if you don't operate that way, you're damaging our ability to respond. We've got to be collaborative. Our system is designed for people to communicate and talk with each other. And so I think as a public official, preaching that, advocating for that, you know this, you were a part of it, but we had our cybersecurity summit last year. We had 1,700 people register. Anybody could come. And we had great talents from Palo Alto, and Jen Easterly kicked it off, and Lee had the Forge component. A lot of the stuff was with us, shared with us. Some of it was separate. It's all about building as many bridges as possible because we need each other's eyes and ears, going back to the warrior ethos.
Well, I appreciate you saying that and what you've done since taking office. It is really past the time where we can say, this is not my responsibility, I'm going to let CISA or somebody else do it. For one point, there is very little left of CISA at this point, and things are changing. And those federal capabilities are really being forced down to the states to pick up. And most of them are not ready to do that. So we have to rock and roll. Supply chain risk is a big part of this, and it goes back to the CCP strategy to just really own all supply chain. When we saw DeepSeek come out, that's China's version of the AI model, there were a lot of knuckleheads in our country that went and downloaded that crap and put it in places that they shouldn't have done, right? One of the biggest technology Trojan horses that we've ever seen. How do we think about supply chain risk Rob, I'll come back to you real quick on that, and then General, I'll switch to you. And what is the role of AI for today's warrior?
You want to go AI or go back to them with supply chain?
Whichever
No,
one.
yeah, let me talk about AI for a second. So this is an area where, first of all, to your point about past time, addressing certain problems, you can't say they're someone else's problems. Look, at a fundamental level, leaders are all about just fixing stuff. And once you get in an elected position or an elevated position, elected or not, you quickly learn that to be your most effective, you need to be willing to just fix anything, whether it's in your lane or not. And that's why you're given the office, that's why you're given a microphone. And to be honest, Arkansans, citizens more broadly, they really don't care whether it's in your lane. If it needs fixing, fix it, right? And that's ultimately what it's about. A lot of the stuff that we're discussing doesn't formally, in fact, no one would ever think that it comes under the AG. But I'm not just the AG, I'm the accumulation of all that I've done before. So if I have old colleagues from the Congress that can help the state, I'm going to do that. When I found out the governor was going to Korea, I had just gotten back from meeting with some Samsung folks and some folks in Seoul about the need for lithium. And so I shared that information. Is that AG responsibility? No, but it was helpful. I got plenty of energy to do what the AG's job requires and a heck of a lot more. And
That's the truth.
As Luke says, to those who much is given, much is expected. It is our job to go fix this stuff. So let me say on AI, that's normally not an AG thing, but we've been very engaged with the legislature because there's some inconsistencies, or was, between federal law and state law on some of the CSAM, child sexual abuse materials, and AI, and what the standard is. And we wanted to bring some synergy to that, so we worked to do that. And the governor, to her credit, set up a group of folks to look at this issue. And look, I think that part of this warrior ethos is to speak up when you see something that needs fixing. I'm going to continue to be engaged on AI to make sure we don't crush the innovation. We want to be balanced, right? We want to do the things we need to do to protect minors and what have you, but at the same time, we don't want to have it crush our competitiveness.
I absolutely agree with everything he just said. But more than that, when you start talking about our roles, truly, if you remember in my earlier remarks, that one of the problems that we have is people truly, do they understand the nature of the threat? And more than that, that everyone participates in this threat. And we're only as strong as our weakest link. And so a lot of what we're trying to do is be able to build those bridges that we could then work together to take some of these threats out of the way. And it's especially important in the state of Arkansas. It's small little Arkansas in the middle of the country, but yet 60% of our food distribution network comes through the state of Arkansas. 40% of the electric grid comes through the state of Arkansas. When you talk about supply chain and what it matters to the country, you're pointing directly at our belly button. And so our ability to be able to answer the bell and be able to not only deter any kind of bad actor, but more than that, to have a capability that allows us to work collaboratively to prevent it and then recover from it is absolutely critical to who we are as Arkansans, but more than that, as Americans. I mean, we have to be able to be able to have these conversations. And the truth of it is that it starts with simple things that build trust and a common shared sense of the threat and our requirements in it.
And a sense of urgency to get after it.
Absolutely.
Right. So General Bridges, in order to build deterrence and capability, AI is really central to that right now. What is AI's, what does it mean to the Guard? What are your needs? What are your thoughts there?
I think artificial intelligence is the most disruptive technology in human history. I think it will disrupt more areas of our life faster than any other technology ever invented, ever fielded, in opportunities and in risks. And so the speed at which this is going to change our society, our lives, we can't fully comprehend. There's opportunities with that. There are risks with that. And so this is unprecedented in human history. From a defense standpoint, we're using it to become more organizationally effective in the Arkansas Army National Guard. Last week, I hired a chief data and AI officer. So I think we're probably one of the first states in state National Guards that have done that. Plan on hiring a data engineer in the fall, a data analyst in the spring, and a data scientist next summer to increase organizational efficiency and effectiveness. And we're looking at ways to use AI in tactical problems and tactical solutions. That is kind of nascent for us, so we're leaning into that. And then on the Air National Guard side, looking at how we can incorporate that into our 223rd Cyber Operations Squadron and some of our operations in the 188th Wing.
I want to applaud the general, not only because he's my boss, but look, I don't know of any other state who is doing that. That is a decision that he did not have to make. And I think it's critical because with the more sophisticated technology, there's often the idea that we're going to leave that to big Army or big Air Force, right? The active duty folks. They've got the money. They'll tell us what we need to know at the time. That's a tempting approach. There's some validity to the money discussion and some other things, but it's a horrible idea to just assume that they're going to get it right. The Guard can work as a laboratory the way so many other things do in this country, with different states trying different things and sharing best practices. Also, if we're talking about collaboration, you've got to have somebody at the level he's talking about, appointed, named, who can interface with the Lees, who can interface with y'all, who can interface with the people who are working granularly on that stuff. It's one thing to be at the strategic level, like the general, and make the decision, but he doesn't have time to be in the weeds of AI training and what have you, and collaborating with the private sector on specifics. He needs someone doing that, and that is critically important. So I will say the budget side is always a struggle for the Guard, because even though it's the most bang for the buck, it's often the first the big Army wants to cut. And so that impacts AI, it impacts your data stuff, it impacts technology, because that's not the cheap stuff.
I will say budgets are hard for nonprofits too, so I'm right there with you, General.
And I've helped you.
Yes, you have.
But, to Attorney General's point, one, we want to be more efficient and effective, and we believe that using data analytics and business intelligence and artificial intelligence, machine learning, can move us into that space. And maybe that can absorb some budget cuts that we may absorb. And so we want to be leaner, but we want to be more effective.
It's a force multiplier.
That's right.
I'm going to come back to them with 2 short questions, but if I could get all of the Forge staff and the entrepreneurs in the program to meet Emerald over here real quick, if y'all just go ahead and get up and go there. Going to need your help with something. Awesome. All right, so second to last question, General Bridges, for you. How is partnerships with academia, business community, entrepreneurs, how is that beneficial to the Guard?
I've got 4 priorities. Number 1, our people, developing them, training them, taking care of them. Number 2, building combat readiness. There's no other kind than to be ready to fight and win our nation's wars. The third one, Lee, is being great partners. Not good, but great partners. And number 4 is modernization. Back to that AI discussion. But we're not going to be successful if we don't have strong partnerships. And inside the Department of Defense, outside the Department of Defense, with private sector, in the government, and the National Guard is a unique organization that is probably unlike any other military organization that collaborates with so many different partners. I highlight the state partnership program. We have 100, every state has a country out there that is partnered with. Ours is Guatemala. We were there last week. Clint O'Neill and I were there last week. And so that is an incredible return on investment from the Department of Defense standpoint to increase allies and partners, basing overflight and access, and increase our strategic advantage, which is different than Russia or China, which is our network of strategic alliances and partners. From our state perspective, we want to be great partners and integrated into the governor's office and into the cabinets and into academia. I'm working with some university officials on some partnerships, not yet final, but we want to partner with universities to help solve our problems, and we think that could be useful for students, both undergraduate and graduate, in advancing their learning objectives and partnering with us as a military to help that endeavor, and we think that would be beneficial.
Just to jump on that as well, is that I do think that General Bridges is being underselling it just a little bit, how critical the good National Guard, and especially our National Guard, is to working in this partnership space. Because they are citizen soldiers, they work in industry, they work with you. And you know, the existing laws that we have under Title 32, it allows a lot more flexibility to be able to integrate with you all and to build those partnerships and build that trust that allows us to be a force multiplier. The active force, it's a little bit tougher road to hoe. But you know, our Guard is absolutely critical, and I believe the critical element that's going to get us to the end state that it needs to be at.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, Rob. And to add on to what he said, and something you mentioned earlier, the networks that are probably most vulnerable are not federal networks. They're probably state, local, or private networks that may be that may be dependencies for the Department of Defense. And so the National Guard can that we have unique authorities to partner with these organizations to help them secure the networks and ensure that we are integrated.
Awesome. So everybody just received a event coin, and you guys haven't seen it yet, but it's that image right there.
Where's ours?
Well, I'm about to get you one. Yeah. It is slightly bigger than the AG's coin. I do have to tell you that. Oh, there we go. All right. So last question. All right. Last question. Looking ahead the next couple of years, what's the single most important we can do to maximize our national security and enhance economic vitality and domestic resiliency?
Well, first of all, if you have the ability and you have an interest, you should look into joining the Guard. Recruiting has gotten better service-wide, but the Guard's always competing with Big Army and the Reserve, and that is something that I tell all young people. It's a separator. It's a resume separator for young people because not a lot of people have that service. I think that as AG, I would say that we've got to continue the collaborative conversations. You know, these public events are great, particularly for networking. You got to be intentional about it. You can't be passive. You have to seek out people who are going to expand your capabilities, your knowledge base. And it's hard. Well, it's at least harder than not doing it. But you got to do it. You've got to do it with intentionality. But for every one of these, you need 100 that aren't in a public forum. And, getting back to the vulnerabilities that the general was talking about. I mean, you could go in through an HVAC at a county level and exploit weaknesses at the state level, and it's not hard, particularly when people are still using password as their password. I mean, it's pretty fundamental stuff. You don't need a top secret clearance to get the fundamentals. As Jen Easterly talked about, you got to get the hygiene right. Just the fundamental hygiene. You don't need the best cologne. You just need to take a shower, right? It's fundamental stuff. And it sounds boring sometimes and pedestrian, but that's where a lot of our vulnerabilities are. Just basic stuff, blocking and tackling.
I said earlier, I think artificial intelligence is the most disruptive technology humans ever invented. And so the single most important thing that we need to do, I would answer in two ways. One is understand the threat. China is not interested in sustaining and promoting the international rules-based order that the U.S. has created since World War II. They want to reshape that to PRC's interest. And my second, so we got to understand the threat of that and the fact that we are in an environment unlike any other time in our national history. Much different than Soviet Union, Cold War, nuclear war, things like that. We are at risk every single day. If you're connected to the internet, your life is connected to the internet. You're at risk every single day. And that's different than any other time in history. And my second part of that answer is the one war we don't want to lose is the artificial intelligence war. And so we don't want to get into a war with China or anyone else, but we don't want to be in a Cold War, I would say, with China. But the war we don't want to lose is the artificial intelligence war.
Absolutely agree with that. And when you add that onto the potential for, quantitative accelerants in the computing arena, it gets really, really spooky, really, really fast. The point I would make with you is that I think all of us need to open our aperture. How many people here have actually heard someone say, well, no one's going to worry about me. I'm boring. No one gives a damn what I'm doing. I even had that with my wife. She wanted to put in Alexa, and I was going like, ain't no way in hell I'm letting that in my house. But they want us to do that. We have to open our eyes to the real nature of the threat. And the hard part of that is that, well, actually, it's not the hardest part. We talk about the high side level of the nature of the threat. You can just open source and understand the nature of the threat that's out there. And with AI and everything, it makes it that much harder. So I would say, first off, we need to open our aperture. And by that, I mean we also need to be working together more closely and building those trust lanes. Because truthfully, I tell this story about as a young captain, I was carrying the hat of the general, and we were in Turkey, and we had just brought in and deployed some Patriot missiles, which is a completely defensive system. And we were having a meeting with his counterpart, which is a Russian general, and he was very, very upset about it. And my boss looks at him and says, "Sir, I don't know why you're upset about it. This is a 100% defensive system. If you never shoot, you can never be touched." And what he said was, and it left a mark on me, he goes, "Yeah, but you're American, and you could change that this afternoon." It's that innovation and that ability to collaborate, to get to the quick answer, and to use the benefits of being a free people. That is what they're trying to go after. And so, we have to, the best counter for that is let's put all our brains together, and there's no one that's going to be able to sit there and compare from a closed society to what we do as free people.
Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that. So we're going to have a social media summit this year, 7th and 8th October, 2 full days. And we're going to have a chunk of that about China and data, social media data, what they're doing with it. We had a big victory in the Arkansas Supreme Court a few hours ago in the TikTok case. We have won every single aspect of that case in the TikTok case that we've got here. We've got 2 filed, actually. We've got one on China's misuse of the data and one on the algorithms that intentionally target minors. But the TikTok has fought back, and we've won every single time, and we just had a big victory today. So stay tuned on that front.
Who's up for some scary reading this summer? Uh-oh, Alexa, Siri's listening. Okay, scariest thing I've read is the congressional report on the Chinese Communist Party. The unclassed document is on the Congressional Research website. You can go read it. The second scariest thing is that they hit their 5-year mark every 5 years, and they're doing studies faster than every 5 years. Yeah. And they're on track to meeting their 2050 objectives, and that's not the world we want to live in. So we have a lot of work to do, but things like Phoenix are a great way to get started. I appreciate you guys for speaking.